Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Things are good. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's good.
Good morning, Eric.
Morning, Sonny. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Wait a couple minutes, let everybody log on, and then we will get started. Close that.
Wow, look at all those people. I'll go turn off the music.
I already did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
It's a good day. The shades are down.
I know.
Sure is
Sun's
pretty.
out.
Sure is pretty out there.
No. Just makes it hard to see the screen.
Yeah.
Josh has some 12 offers on that house in Fairway that Chad wrote up.
Very good. All right. Good morning, everyone. We are going to get started. Can you all see my screen that is being shared right now in Zoom world?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Good. All right, let's kick things off. So this is how to win in a multiple offer situation for today's home buyers. Obviously, we are in a frenzy market, and inventory is extremely scarce. I heard 44 offers last night on a house in Kirkland, and sold for $900,000 over asking. Just a couple weeks ago, heard in Redmond, a place sold $1 million over asking, and they had 30-something offers. And I think like 19 of them were
Cash.
no, not cash. It was like 19 of them were at 2 million. They had gotten to 2 million, but it actually, the price went all the way up to 2.5 is what they ended up taking. So lots of cash offers out there right now. Hopefully you guys did the NOC certifications so you could get that additional tool, in your tool belt, because it is going to be a necessary, product to use when you got clients who have to sell a home in order to buy. And they have some actually really good other programs too. So if you have not done the NOC course, the certification, which is free and free access to those lenders, which we're the first couple firms in the whole state of Washington that even have access to these guys. So definitely take advantage of that. I know a few of you have even started on using some of the material that they've given for the free social media stuff, right? Well, have you done that?
Yep.
Have you gotten any responses or anybody inquiring yet?
They've been forwarding my posts a lot.
People are forwarding your posts.
A lot of likes, but no comments. But it's just like I did have one person on Facebook saying I'm really interested. Can I forward this to my clients?
Oh,
They've been forwarding it, and I haven't got anything like.
nothing yet, but you're getting interactions.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah, I would definitely certainly use that, in your conversations with at your open houses, and utilizing those to get yourself some leads. But let's kick things off with a quiz, pop quiz. What key element is the seller looking for in a transaction? What key element?
Certainty.
Certainty. Someone's taken this one before. Certainty. That is it. That's the name of the game. It's a firm conviction that something is the case. It is going to happen. It's going to close without a doubt, right? So when you are forming your offers, you're forming your offer letter, your cover letters, and everything that you do, you need to keep that in the back of your mind that you have to create certainty for the seller and for the listing broker and anybody else involved in which you're communicating with. Obviously, this is the yearly housing cycle, right? Lennox talks about this all the time. This is exactly what happens year after year for our market. And really, the best time to buy a home is when the timing is right for our buyers. But how do you know you're going to be in a multiple offer situation right now? How do you know? What reasonings would tell you that?
Inventory.
Yeah, just looking at the inventory levels, you should know. I mean, just glancing at those, you should pretty much see that things are so low. You're probably going to have competition almost on every single deal out there because it is extreme low. How about in the listing details? Huh? How about the offer review dates? If you see an offer review date, does that pretty much tell you they're anticipating seeing multiple offers?
And some of them, they don't have offer review date in the beginning, but a couple days later, they end up having one.
Yeah. Are they allowed to do that?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes listing brokers, they'll do their CMAs and maybe you can't find comps, you can't find anything that's going to match to the subject property you're trying to list. And it can be hard sometimes, right? Trying to find that evidence. But then you come up with a number and then the next thing you know, like, well, we can try this. It sounds kind of high, but then you put it on there and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're just getting tons and tons of activities and offers already, immediately. So make sure, being a listing broker, you talk to your seller and you can actually kind of pause things and say, hey, let's go ahead and put up an offer review date for this now. So you can do that. Jason? Oh, I thought you raised hand.
I think calling the listing agent also is another important part.
Yeah, calling. How about that? Good old communication. How about mini business cards? There you go, Keith. Yeah, when you're at the showing. Absolutely. You've seen tons of business. Just went on the market. What about showing time? You're going to make it an appointment and you already see a bunch of them are already blacked out for days and it just went live like hours ago. That's another sign. The relationship we create with other brokers and vendors is everything. They are VIP clients. Returning calls, emails, and doing what you say you're going to do is critical in our business. The brokers to whom you present your offers to will either choose to work with you because you make their lives easier, or they won't work with you in today's multiple offer environment. Treat them the way you want to be treated in any and all situations. What goes around comes around. Just remember the golden rule. Properly educate your buyers for today's seller's market. Buyers must know how many homes sold today are in a multiple offer scenario and were sold above list price, as they may never get a chance to counteroffer. Present current market statistics to reflect how quickly our market has changed, and properly educate your buyers to the current market. The goal is to manage their expectations and prepare them to come in as strong as possible. What tools and technology can you use for this? How would you explain that to a client? You can't just tell them the market is busy, it's frenzy, it's crazy. That, a lot of times buyer, yeah, whatever, okay, well,
Showing the recent
King
listing
County breakouts.
and the gold price.
showing what's sold around the house.
Recently, what the list
Yeah.
said and what it's.
What else, Esteban? Or what was that one? Somebody in Zoom spoke up.
Eric, I screenshot showing time to a client. Like Esteban said, I'm not gonna show a listing without talking to the listing agent. I need to know if they will look at an offer early and if we need to get in the house early.
Yep.
And any communication that I have with the listing agent, if the listing agent tells me, oh, we already have 3 offers, we have 4 pre-inspections, if I can get that in a text or an email and forward it directly to the client so that it's not coming from me, it's coming from the other agent.
Yeah,
Let them,
that's all really good. Here's some good ideas you guys can utilize. How about the housing updates? Have your clients signed up for that housing update automatically. Like as soon as you meet them, talk with them, now they're getting the housing update for that region. Because then they'll just automatically see it if you're working with them for a while, right? This will keep them informed. Market insights. If they want some specific community, you can sign them up and set them up for that so they automatically get that exact neighborhood. Because now that you go from, you know, a big Zoom out of an area to more of a hyper-local targeted area, a lot tighter, and this will give them a lot more details. Obviously, that's an old one, 2.7 months supply of inventory. I don't think there's any of that in the whole state of Washington. How about your buy side? You could send them BMAs, right? Or you can sign them up or send them what the AVMs are, let them see, and also how many matched buyers and just John L. Scott footprint is, you know, looking for a home like that in that price range in that same school district with that many bedrooms. Like that type of technology might also help open their eyes. What about Trend Graphics? Anybody using Trend Graphics? That's a fantastic tool. You should absolutely be doing that. Especially for those analytical people who love charts and graphs and numbers and right? Analytical people want to see the numbers and you know, you can show them the data. You just telling them, it just doesn't work sometimes. I heard somebody in here talking just like a week ago that yeah, they got a buyer and they want to make an offer under asking. You know, and they're like, well, we can just try. Can you really do that right now? So I had the conversation, well, what have you showed them? How are you? Well, I told them the market's really busy and we're seeing multiple offers. It's like, you're gonna have to like give people the evidence and let them kind of come to the discovery themselves. And then of course your John L. Scott home search app. On your phone, share the app, let them see targeted right around the house.
Question.
Well-
I've been sending like houses through my app. Some of my clients aren't able to open the link. I don't know why. It sends just that, you know how you send a link just from Redfin, you're able to open it up. For
Yeah.
some
Now, are
reason.
you going like from the app,
Yeah,
clicking a
from-
listing and sharing the listing
Yep.
directly via text?
Yep.
Yeah, that's strange.
Because
That should.
he emailed me or texted me yesterday. He's like, hey, the list you sent me, I'm not able to open the house up.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should report that bug to broker care. If you have, especially if you have screenshots.
Okay.
Let's talk about being buyer ready day one. Okay, day one checklist. Very first thing should be a buyer consultation. That is the name of the game, right? We talk about this all the time in accountability. Like, get the appointment, so you can have the sit down, and if that's face to face or Zoom to Zoom, whatever way you can get it done, do it. But try to strive, you know, for that consultation. One of the best lines you can say at an open house when you're meeting all these buyers and they're coming through is like, oh, hey, how are you doing? You know, are you familiar with this neighborhood? How long have you been looking? Oh, have you made offers? Oh, well, surely by now you've had a buyer's consultation, right? And they're like, what? What's that? You just saying like, surely by now you've had a buyer consultation. should get them to, kind of like perk up, like, well, what is that, Oh, it's to actually sit down, go over strategies over a whole marketplace and what you're trying to do in it, and also to look at off-market properties, not just stuff that's listed, because if you're only looking at stuff that's listed, you're competing with everybody else. So if you want to win more appointments and have better dialogue, but you've got to have a consultation. Market conditions by price range and locations. Home buying strategy guide. It's a no-brainer. I think a lot of times when people get into this business, I think the thing they struggle with the most is kind of like figuring out like what to say. What do I say? You've got a guide. Learn it. It's super simple. You don't need to memorize the entire, script, but just looking at each page, you should be able to just look at it, have memories, and talk about a few pointers for each one of those guides. They're in PowerPoint, they're in Keynote, you could put them on your iPad, you could put them they're actually in your app, they're always inside your app even. You can share it and put it on any of their TVs. But it's an easy thing for you to kind of go over to make sure you don't miss anything. And it just makes you look way more professional, and you're giving people strategies and insight to the home buying process as well. JLS housing updates, market insights, and then instant response market. All right, time for another quiz. Take your number 2 pencils out. What is the one key element to all multiple offers? Simona mentioned it earlier. I'll give you a hint.
Conversation with the listing agent?
What was it?
Conversation with the listing agent?
Conversation with the listing agent? Communication. Communication is everything in this business. How many listing brokers, either on Zoom or in the room, have received an offer and not even a phone call? Nothing.
It wasn't the winning offer.
It wasn't the winning offer. That was going to be my next question. Most of the time, the people that just do that, they don't even win. There's no communication. Therefore, there's no idea what insight or information you can gather, from conversation. Yeah. Can you show the last screen again, Yvonne? Which last screen, Yvonne?
The one where the buyer consultation, you had things come up, but you left so fast. I couldn't finish writing down what you had.
Okay.
Just real quickly, please. I'll take a picture. So,
You're talking about this one.
yes.
Okay.
Let me move you out of the middle of it though.
All right. So
Got it.
Communication is it's the key thing you just have to do. You got to pick up the phone. You've got to call.
Texting doesn't count, guys, sorry.
Yeah. I know sometimes you're going to have times where you can't get a hold of the listing broker. I hear this one a lot, right? I mean, this one happens. Then you text, then you call the office. You just do everything you can in your power to do that, because you've got to do everything in your power to win for your client. They're your focus. So everyone has one of these super computers in their pockets. There's more technology in our cell phones now than there was when they put men on the moon. Okay, that's a true fact. There's more power in your phone in your pocket than back then. But yet the main component that this technology is for communication. It's a phone. And I think Simona said it best, call. You need to make sure there's voice-to-voice communication. I talked to someone just like back in December, and they said, yeah, I couldn't hear back from the listing broker. I knew where their office, I drove to their office. Drove to their office and I got them face to face. They were like, whoa. And Larry, he was like, well, sorry, it didn't, return calls and stuff. And they ended up getting a deal. But, I mean, if you have to go that far, sometimes maybe you have to.
And you brought up a good point, Eric, is that you have the right to present in person unless there's a letter on file.
Mhm. We're going to talk about that. Okay, call the listing broker to inquire about any special seller needs. For example, preferred closing dates, excluded items, etc. Ask about listing broker needs. Is there lender or escrow company that they prefer that you are also comfortable working with? Most brokers will list the title and escrow in the agent-only remarks, even with the order number. That is the proper way probably to do things. But there's still, to this day, I see a lot of listings that don't have the info. So then, asking who they prefer. You're trying to be a team player and be cooperative. And doing what you can. Sellers and listing agents are not only looking for the highest priced offer, but also the one that minimizes their risk and gets them to a smooth closing. It is not always the highest offer that gets accepted, and always be nice. When people, right now, when brokers are sending or communicating that you didn't win in offers, it's getting pretty bad. Some of the stuff I've seen is like someone literally copy and pasting email. If you are receiving this email, you have, your buyer did not win the offer. something, thank you, blah, blah, blah. It was really, that was pretty much it. I saw. If you're a listing broker, I know it's difficult. You're going to be super busy. I talking to a few people just within this week and last week that they spent hours, like 5-6 hours, preparing all the offers, putting them in an Excel file and and a quick sheet to compare all the offers, to go over it with the seller. It's a long process, and then calling back and forth like, hey, if you guys did this, can your buyer do this? We like this better. You're going to spend more time, but I think at the same time, listing brokers have got to be delicate in the communicating process of letting the buyer brokers know that they did not win. Right? I think that should be a really good process that you should have down, because you never know if that deal does flop and it does fall through.
Or it goes pending and they never let you know that your offer wasn't accepted.
Yeah.
Your clients are like, oh, it went pending, I guess it wasn't us. And you're like, I don't know. I get a lot of listing agents that don't communicate back.
Yeah, communication is so important. It goes a really, really long way. And for you to what do you mean we didn't win? We should have been the highest. You said if we went to this, we would get it. I'm sorry, another deal came in. You cannot ever do that. Even sometimes when you want to, because they've been so poor in their communication and stuff like that. But, stick to being professional, giving good, clear communication, because you never know if you've got to go back to all those other people. All right. Kill them with kindness. Okay. So reach out to the listing agent. Send a video text. This is a new concept people have started to do. Has anyone received one of these yet? No? Nobody there? No one?
I did last week.
Yeah. You did last week? Who was that?
Yeah, one of the 13 offers that came through. One of the guys sent me a video just introducing himself.
How did that make you feel?
He was very good at communicating, so he got good communication back.
Yeah. Yeah, and did he end up winning the offer? I don't think he did, though. No. No, but you know what? When you remember someone like, hey, this person was not, they're pleasant to work with. I could work with them. You're going to come into times, in these multiple offer situations where listing brokers will remember you. because of your past or because of communication you gave on previous deals. I remember someone else saying too that that they sent them a Starbucks gift card and said, "Hey, I bet you probably can use some coffee because of how many I heard how many offers you ended up having, and I know it's tough out there, but I just appreciate you being a clear communicator." And they like call them. They're like, "Thank you. No one's ever done this. Like, she's totally gonna remember them. Like, whoa, who does that anymore?" I think right now, like, that's the types of like little things everyone should be trying to do differently now, because you've got to stand out above the crowd. There's almost 40,000 licensed brokers in the Northwest MLS in Washington. Okay, that's a lot of competition. How do you shine brighter? Doing different things. So just remember that.
Hey, Eric.
Yo.
I've actually worked with a lender who would send videos, crack jokes, and like dance and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And at first I was shocked, but it actually helped us get an offer accepted.
That's awesome. Yeah, little things, just standing out. Our market is flooded, is it not, with competition and just, other brokers. And Tom Ferry talked about this at the last 2 conventions. In fact, this last one, he really dove in deep about the higher caliber brokers are going to rise to the top, and there's going to be a larger separation in the caliber of agent in our industry. He said the gap is going to get massive. And he said it's because of things like this, because competition is going to drive them down. So the more professional, more seasoned, the more knowledge-based brokers are going to be winning more, and it's just going to get tougher. So coming to classes like this is ways that also, he said too, like education, getting as much knowledge as you can, learning some new thing, like that is going to be the key. Like, you've got to like stick to that. Offer unique benefits to the seller, right? Quick close, free rent backs. We're seeing that. I know those are dangerous. We're going to talk about those. Other terms, financial benefits. Or there's the latter strategy. Ask the buyer, are you willing to lose the house for this much, right? Talking to the buyers is important. Like, at what price are you okay losing this house? What are you guys saying to buyers right now? When they say, "Hey, I see this is listed for $700 or $650." Here, what price is that going to right now? Those are going to the 9s, right?
15 to 20% over?
Yeah, 15 to 20% over. Yeah, that's on newer homes. Yeah, one we heard was 40% over.
Listed for 800, sold for 1.2.
Yeah.
Only had 5 offers an hour before.
Yeah.
They were accepting
16 or
offers, and
something.
then ended up with 31 total that all came in the last hour.
Hey, Eric.
Sierra?
This is Fabi.
Oh, hey, Fabi. Sorry.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, no, I definitely, I wanted to just provide feedback on that. I know Jesse mentioned that that's something that he uses with his buyers anytime he's out in the market, especially in our market like today. And that's something that I've used with my buyer, especially as we are going into this multiple offer situation, right? And it almost puts it back on them, and it gives them the opportunity to really be able to think through, like, okay, provide some strategies. Now now they understand and know, well, more than likely we're going to have to go up higher. How much are we willing to do that? And so I definitely think that's made a big difference anytime that I'm working with my buyers and having them already start thinking through that in advance.
Yeah.
Well, and I think breaking it down, instead of saying, "Hey, are you willing to lose the house by 50 grand?" breaking it down to what that means in a mortgage payment. And at 4% interest, that's probably $200 a month. That's 2 dinners out. So I think that they get so caught up on the 50,000, 100,000, 150 over. And if you break it down in the monthly mortgage payment, that's a little bit easier for them to
Yeah, you've definitely got to involve the lender, involve the lender in the pricing. When people are, they come to you and they're like, hey, I'm pre-approved for 700. What price point are you going to start of houses are you sending them right now?
Probably about 500, 550 max.
Lamas, how much?
600.
100, probably up to like 600 or like, less.
Yeah. You definitely got to start showing houses under whatever they're pre-approved at.
Way under.
Because you're gonna get somebody. I mean, it's happening right now. I talked to someone and they said that they lost a buyer because they just can't find a house because everything is so expensive. And it's like, well, what price point? What were you sending them? Well, they're approved for 6. I'm sending them 625. Those homes are elevating, 50, 70,000 over asking. You could be maxing them out. So get that. It all kind of comes back full circle about having those consultations. As soon as you're done with your consultation with this buyer, if you have not met with their talk and communicated with their lender yet, that's going to be in the plan. Like that's part of the discussion. You're going to talk to the client. Say, hey, we need to involve your lender and find out what is the max loan. So they understand that, hey, we can't just like your max at 700. We're not going to start showing $700,000 properties. You're gonna get your feelings hurt pretty quick. All right, let's continue. All right, making the deal stronger in Form 21. Now let's go through some actual practical transactional items. Okay, so first, expiration date. How long are you giving offers an expiration date for right now?
I would ask the listing agent what they're comfortable with.
Ask the listing agent, okay. Well, let's see, today's Tuesday. House just went on the market Tuesday. They're having offer review on Monday.
Depends on
6 days.
Submit on Monday with expiration on Monday.
So you're gonna wait all the way to Monday? Like,
As long as you're keeping communication and you have that, talking to the listing agent, let me know if there's any early offers that come in. I'll wait till Monday because then they'll shop your offer all day.
I want you, anybody raise your hand or speak up if you want an offer before the review date. Is anyone?
Yep.
Okay. So part of your consultation is talking to your buyers and saying, hey, just because they say they're having a review date doesn't mean they have to wait that long. Because what's the MLS rule say?
Seller may or may not stick to the review period. But again, it all comes down to communication. If you're waiting for the review period, you wait for communication. The last thing you want to do is burn a bridge because you sent an early offer and they told you not to do it. So and then they get at you because they're like, well, you didn't follow my instructions, so why are you sending me an early offer?
Well, like in those situations.
Catch-22 though, right? Because another agent can say, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
So it's all about really understanding what the agent wants.
It is, but there's also, you have a statutory duty to someone. Who is that?
Your buyer.
To the client. That's right. Yeah. What if your client says, I want you to submit this offer and we're going to give them way above. We're going to close in 10 days. We're going to waive inspections. We're going to release earnest money. We're going to do all these things and make it the shiniest offer in the pile, even before they get a bunch of them. But we're going to have a really short, offer expiration date.
You just let them know the risk. And then you do what that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're in that situation and the listing broker says, I don't want to see offers until the review date, you pick up the phone and say, hey, look, I know you say not to, but my client is requesting that I do this, so I'm going to have to send it. Therefore, will you please submit it to your seller?
Then the selling or the listing agent needs to change the remarks in the computer about the listing
No, they don't.
timeframe?
No, because the rule is that a seller
Like-
may accept an offer sooner.
But if they said, okay, or if they didn't say that, they were going to, then they have to change it, the list,
No,
Even
No.
if they put in the agent remarks firm on review date,
yeah.
just making every other buyer's agent think even they're waiting.
yeah, doesn't matter. If your client is like telling you, I want this offer submitted, are you gonna say, well, they said, I read in the paper it said no. And not do it?
I'm just
Yeah.
asking that the listing agent needs to inform all the other
Mm-mm.
real
They
estate
don't.
brokers or put in the agent remarks that.
They really don't.
They don't.
Mm-mm.
So that means nothing.
There's no rule there about
It means
that.
nothing.
Mm-mm. There's no rule about it.
It's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the listing broker, you get an offer early, it's really attractive, and your seller's like, oof, I don't know if I want to wait until, what if we don't get anything this high again and everything, you know?
Or they don't want to.
And they want it
Or they don't want to be out the whole
Yeah,
weekend.
they don't
with a
want any
bunch
more
of people
showings.
Schlepping through their house,
During COVID.
and they're like, "Oh, we'll take it." Maybe they didn't want to take it, but they can.
Out of every single listing in the whole MLS that has an offer review date and then the words in the agent remarks that says firm on review date, no early offers. How many of those do you think that the seller even knows that that's in the agent remarks? What percentage? I know, probably 50-50, Simona.
Yeah.
Because I think brokers do that, you know, because they don't want to deal with early offers. So that is a strategy. So you can win before. So these are things that you should be talking with the client, with the buyer about in your consultation. Is like, hey, we have a right, we can do this, but what negative thing is that? What kind of negative impact can that have?
I'm not gonna show your listings anymore.
Not going to show the listings
Well,
anymore?
I'm just saying that if they said that in the agent remarks and then they
Mhm.
didn't stick with it, and they didn't tell the other people that wanted to bring in an offer.
Well, hopefully, BK, they did kind of communicate, because you being a listing broker, you should pick up the
Oh, yeah,
phone and
sure.
communicate to everyone and tell them. Because a lot of people are just like, they're waiting, right? They don't want to show their cards. They don't want to show what they're willing to go all the way up to, you know? Because if you're doing an early offer, you're not going to use an escalation. There's no other offers probably, right?
But it might not be the agent's fault. It might be driven by the sellers.
It
Where
might.
the sellers are just like, we
Yeah.
want to take it and let's get it off the market.
Yeah, I mean, it could.
Then they need to change their remarks.
I won one today. Oh, I mean yesterday. Right?
You won one today and yesterday?
No,
Two
that
up?
was yesterday actually.
He's not back.
Oh,
Who is that?
Tomasi. Are you zooming in from Turkey?
I'm zooming from Turkey. Let me show
It
you my
sounds
video.
like
I don't
it.
know. Can you see me? Eric?
No, I've got I'm sharing a screen, so I can't see.
Okay. Okay.
That's
all right.
awesome. Congratulations. So offer review date or offer expiration date is important. Communication is going to help you decide that. Okay?
So I have a question, Eric.
Yes, Amos.
So you make an offer, like the offer review date is the day after, like, let's say tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
So you wanna make an offer today, the buyer can wait. You do it, but how long you have to put that that night or?
If you're going in before the review date, you make sure it's a short, really short period.
I have.
Same day even.
I have them it goes away. Sometimes the agent, I communicate every single, like, every 5-6 hours, like, where we are, you know, this and that. But they keep your offer and they shop around telling other people, oh,
And
I got this and I got that.
That's exactly what I was talking about showing your cards. You've got to talk to your client about what's negative about trying to do this strategy and what's positive. The negative definitely is the fact that you have showed all your buyers' cards, how high they're willing to go, yeah, that listing broker can, with the direction from their seller, shop that offer around to all the other agents. Say, these guys are willing to go to X. Are you willing to throw in your firstborn and jump in, do the same thing? You can. I mean, they can do that. It's just, it is a way. People have won before the review dates. It happens.
You better make sure your client's super strong. So if on a 500 or 600 price point, you think you're gonna write it for 10,000 over, 20,000 over, or 30,000 over early and get it, it's not gonna happen.
No, I came up like 200, 250.
That's actually not true. I talked to someone, they got their offer and it was only like 15 or 18,000 over. It was not that much, but I guess the client had so much stress from the amount of showings and the neighborhood that it caused like issues between the neighbors. Like, what the heck is going on? You had like 60 cars in our neighborhood for the open house. The seller took the deal because they felt that it had certainty in the offer. It was conveyed well, and they just said, my seller's distressed and they want to take your offer. You never know. All right, purchase price. The price, right? If you're going to use an escalation, are you going to write it at list price, below list price, above list price, and still have an escalation? What kind of strategy are you guys doing right now? You're going above listing and an escalation. You too?
What about the escalation amount?
What type of escalation? What type of increments are you giving in escalations?
I mean, that depends on the listing, because yesterday I talked to a listing agent. He said give me highest and best, don't put an escalation.
That's different.
Yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah. But I was gonna do 25 and $25,000.
What price point?
1 million and over.
Oh, no. $2,500.
He said 25,000.
Oh,
That's
1,000, okay.
right.
That's right.
That makes sense.
I did 5,000 in
You-
like a 500.
$500,000, and you didn't, yeah. Yeah, the increments in your escalations is really important, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but it doesn't really matter about the price if you're using an escalation, because if any other offers have escalations in them as well, which is a very high probability that you're going to see those, it automatically moves those offers to the max price. That's what it does. If there's any other competing offers that the seller's looking at and they all have escalators, you are escalating them to the max price on every one of them. That's how you start calculations. So doesn't really matter if you're using an escalation on what the price is. I think most of the time I see people write just list price, but it's okay to do it. It doesn't really matter. All right, earnest money amounts. No. There we go. Earnest money amounts. What are you guys writing right now? How much? How much?
So around 20,000 for anything listing price or like 700. 3 to 5%, I would say.
3 to 5%. That's actually more accurate right now in our market. 3 to 5%. It has really risen high. If you're still doing the old school rule of thumb of 1%, that's kind of the old school, oh, you do 1%, 1%. If you're still doing that today, that could be reasons why you're losing. You need to probably be more in the 3 to 5%. I need to update this slide. It's just, that's what we're seeing. The competition is so fierce the earnest money amount that buyers can put up is just much higher. When you're reviewing offers as a listing broker, one of the things you're always comparing the other offers to is how much is earnest money, huh? That's one of your bullet points. So make sure you're looking at that. Make sure you're having the discussion with the buyer during the consultation on how much and what does that mean. What's the max percent that they could lose to risk? Do you guys know? 5%. That's the max. So courts will look at that if it's over. I mean, there's other things involved, and obviously I'm not an attorney, nor have I played one on TV, but that is what they will follow. They'll follow the boilerplate language of our forms. So, earnest money reminder, do not forget, let me clear these, 20,000 or higher. Do not forget, you touch a client's earnest money at all, you must provide a Form 89, the receipt for earnest money. So if the client says, hey, here's my check, and you're like, okay, I'll make a copy of it, you know, just to show good faith, and we'll write it out for that escrow company already, right? And then I'll photocopy it, but I'll black out the account numbers, because you can never transmit account numbers on any communication pieces, so make sure you guys are blocking those off. Make a copy, send it along with the offer, like, hey, we are ready to go. If you do that, if you're doing that procedure even before you get a mutual, acceptance, you still have to give them a Form 89 that you took their earnest money. And if you got mutual acceptance in that example, you would have to actually deliver that Form 89 to the listing firm. They have to have a copy to have proof. Does not matter. The only way you don't have to give this form is if you do not touch their funds at all. So most of the time brokers are telling, clients to go deliver the earnest money to, ABC escrow, or, have it wired. And of course, talk about the wiring fraud, issues in our industry to make sure that they phone the actual company and talk with the closer, confirm the routing numbers and the wire instructions, right? So that should always happen. What happens if the buyer fails to even give that earnest money on time? Is the deal just dead? Automatically? Is it? What do you think?
The seller would have to cancel it,
right? It's the seller can terminate. Can. They could go all the way closing. Well, I'm okay. We've had sellers do this. It's weird, but not in this market. Yeah. All right, the good old non-refundable earnest money. We are seeing this one a lot again. Boy, this one's coming on a ton. Okay, we have attorney drafted language. This is in our transaction desk office clauses. You can input this. This is very, very dangerous, all right? This has a lot of consequences that could come to our clients if you use this. I'll go over the better option here in a moment, but this basically says dollar amount of the earnest money deposit shall be released to the seller within 2 business days of mutual acceptance. Immediately upon delivery of the earnest money, the release funds shall be the property of the seller and then shall become a non-refundable deposit, but will still be applicable towards the sale. If this transaction fails to close for any reason other than default or breach of this agreement by the seller, said non-refundable deposit shall remain the property of the seller. Nothing in this paragraph precludes buyer from legal remedies from seller's default or breach. Dangerous to put, I mean, the last like probably 5 or 6 listing brokers from our office who I've talked to about the multiple offers, I would say 5 out of the 6 of them, the offer they took had non-refundable earnest money in it. What does that do? What does that create? You think that creates some certainty for the seller? It does. I mean, people are not going to give up their money and not close. What you would think. Last year, I got a call from a client. Said, hey, maybe you can help me. I was referred to you by someone, and they said, maybe you might be able to help. And I said, okay, what's going on? They said, hey, well, we had this transaction, and it was up in Kirkland, and price point was like 1.8 million, 1.9 million. And we had a non-refundable earnest money. We missed the closing by 1 day. The seller would not extend. They took a backup offer in all cash, and then they ended up closing in like 5 days because they would not return our calls, they wouldn't do anything, and they still won't give my money back. I was like, what attorneys have you talked to? He's like, I've talked to like several. When a buyer loses those funds, I mean, they're gone. How do you get money back in a seller's account? Lawsuit. I mean, yeah, but even the attorneys were like, hey, there's nothing I can do. Like, you signed this all and
you didn't close.
You didn't close. You didn't close on time. But it wasn't my fault. It doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter. These are so high risk. The highest one I've ever seen in the history of me managing was in South Lake Union. It was a property in like, was it in Capitol Hill? No, it was in Queen Anne. Purchase price was like $879,000. Guess how much earnest money was?
500 grand.
No, more.
879.
All of it.
All. It was $879,000 earnest money. Released to the seller immediately as a non-refundable deposit. Yeah.
What about title?
Oh yeah, there's title contingency and all this, but it doesn't matter. Once you gave that money up, I mean, they closed because the money's already there. It's done. What are they gonna do? It closed in like 5 days. I mean, that's kind of the mark we're seeing. If clients have cash and they could do that thing, that is a strategy. It can work. But it is risk. It is very high risk because there is no way and no guarantee, even if the seller did default and didn't allow closing and didn't go to closing and didn't sign, and they've got that money still. How are you going to get it back? Yeah. There is another way. Andy Matthews, our in-house legal counsel, has made this non-refundable fee addendum. It is in Transaction Desk in company forms. So all you got to do if you're in Transaction Desk, go to your, you're in the forms view list. The list drop down, it's all forms stacked. Click the plus button, and then when the forms, search is open, click in the search bar, just type in JLS. That'll give you all of the John L. Scott forms. So it's all in there. But the non-refundable fee addendum is quite different. You've got to be very careful. Note, there are risks to buyers and sellers associated with non-refundable fees. The parties are advised to seek legal counsel before signing. So here's the buyer of the property. Buyer shall pay a non-refundable fee, and that's called the fee, to seller in the amount of whatever within how many days after mutual acceptance. The fee shall be deposited with the closing agent and then released to the seller as soon as practicable upon closing agent's receipt of immediately available funds. The fee shall be applied to the purchase price. And then the buyer understands and agrees that the fee is not earnest money. This is not earnest money. So if you're going to give a $10,000 non-refundable fee, do you write that in on the front page of the Form 21?
No.
No, it's not earnest money. It's not identified as earnest money. Okay? Is non-refundable under any circumstance other than a default by seller, seller default, other following, select all that apply, seller's exercise of a right of termination in the agreement for a reason other than buyer's default, or seller's inability to provide insurable title pursuant to general term E of the agreement. If you're going to use this form, make sure you mark both those boxes every single time. Okay, seller default and the items selected above are each a refund event. Other than the occurrence of a refund event, there are no contingencies or conditions that will allow buyer to recover the fee. If this transaction fails to close for any other reason other than a refund event, the fee shall remain the property of seller. Buyer therefore understands and agrees that with respect to the amount of the fee set forth herein, there are no contingencies. This addendum does not affect buyer's rights, if any, to recover earnest money in connection with any contingencies in the agreement. So it is quite clear that it is not earnest money, it is separate money. If you use this, you cannot just send it over to the listing broker and not explain and not have a conversation with them so they can understand what you are doing. Because if you did 10,000 of earnest money on the front page and you did 10,000 on the NRF, how much is that total deposit buyer has to give? How much?
20,000.
20 grand. They got to give 20,000 bucks. Okay. We've seen some deals where brokers have used this and they wrote 10, buyer deposits 10, and then they're in breach. And then they're like, well, we're keeping your earnest money, it's non-refundable. Like, no, we deposited earnest money. We didn't deposit the non-refundable fee. And then all of a sudden the escrow's like, oh gosh, now we got to get our legal counsel and involved, and it could be a mess. So it's dangerous, but even Annie Fitzsimmons says this is a better way to do it because you are dividing and showing, what they're willing to lose if they don't close, and yet they're still protected under their contingencies in the agreement. And we're going to get over some more of these contingencies in a sec.
So, Eric, how
Yep.
do you make your difference if you're in multiple offer when the listing agent give this kind of thing, when the other people have non-refundable right away, they will go with the other offer, right? When you put this?
This is better.
Well, this is better because you still have contingencies of protection that are normal in our boilerplate language forms.
Okay.
Like,
And then also, what's the difference saying non-refundable or offer, 20,000 earnest money would be available to the seller after mutual? What is it, both?
well, this, if you just made that blanket statement, then it's not, there's no protections at all. I mean, that doesn't say it in those wordings that it's just released to the seller. What if the seller's like, I'm not going to sell now. Change my mind. It's a small additional layer of protection for our clients to at least make the sellers, be on notice that if they don't perform, that money is to be returned. Or if title isn't clear, that money gets returned. If you just wrote, and I have seen offers that come in that earnest money released to seller within 2 business days of mutual. That's it. Oh, okay. I remember when in Bellevue that they did that and they're like, okay. And then they did the HUD, and the list broker's like, oh, make sure that the $20,000 that they just released isn't credited. They didn't say that that's applicable towards the sales price. That's just bonus money. We took that as you meant it's bonus money for taking your offer. So you need to still deposit your additional $20,000 in your down payment, because there's no credit of earnest money. So you got to be really careful with the language you write. I would much rather see, if you're not going to use the non-refundable fee, that you at least use the attorney drafted language, the 1 through 4 items. Because in that language, maybe you had 25,000 earnest money, and then in the amount of earnest money released was only 10. That's the threshold of the buyer's like, look, I'll release 10, but that's it. I'm not willing to lose more than that. So it's just better options. All right, we're moving along here. Closing dates, possession. Closing dates are important, are they not? That is another bullet point item you are going to list out as a listing broker with multiple offers on how soon these offers can close. Maybe if that house is vacant, the seller's like, hey, close in 5 days. I want it done. We're out already, and it's already clean and finished. So closing dates are very important. Where are you going to get the information on when you can close? Lender. You need to be in communication with the lender of when they can close. So important to find this out. I mean, this is a really key element of communication that you really need to know to set that offer, right, down the right path. Otherwise, if they can't close, you write 10, 15 days just because, hey, we want to win, and maybe we can get an extension later. That's not a good strategy, especially if you're giving earnest money releases at all. You're doing earnest money releases, you better get concrete communication from the lender, maybe even via email, just so you can have documentation that you did ask, how soon can we close safely? If a buyer's completely fully underwritten, could be a different story. Most of the time people write towards the end of the month or on a Friday. I think I would start avoiding that concept, right? That strategy. At least maybe like Wednesdays, I hear, is like one of the best days to close. You have less people all trying to close on that day, for one. Two, if you did need an extension, you've got a couple more days before they end, right? And then three, the counties are still having issues on recording on time. So if everybody's all trying to cram all the deals to close on a Friday, on the last day of the month, which is the busiest day, you have a better chance at having a little bit of wiggle room. So maybe talk to the lender, say, hey, I see, we're the 10th, we're the 8th today. Can I, put it towards the day before the last day of the month? Or, just have a strategy and talk with them. Can you do this? Or sooner. You guys still seeing these words on offers? Or sooner? What does that mean? When is or sooner? Does anybody know?
It means nothing.
It means nothing. When, I don't know. Who knows? Or sooner is just these words that have came into our industry, onto our contracts, to tell the other party that, hey, we can close sooner, right? And it's a safety blanket or something that, that still kind of helps people win. I mean, Annie Fitzsimmons said, she hates this, those wording. She has seen, there's been multiple cases in law, in court, over this. It can cause issues, but it is a strategy people are still doing. How else could you communicate this, you think, and not have to write it? What do you think? How would you do that? What's a good strategy?
Probably on the 22D as other.
I don't think I would put it in the contract at all, because it's not, it doesn't mean anything. There's no definition. Contracts need defined dates and end times, right?
I think the problem, Eric, arises is that anybody that was a broker 10 years and greater,
Yeah.
they used to be able to do it. And so there's a lot of people out in the industry that still write it that way and still think they can close
Yep.
with
Josh.
that verbiage.
Do you write or sooner on your offers?
No.
Closing?
No,
Never.
never, ever do we ever write it on there. But I see offers that come in. I mean, an offer, maybe both offers we signed off this morning probably had it on there. I don't like strike it off to make a counter out of it, but what does or sooner mean? Like
Bingo.
Yeah.
tomorrow?
I don't know. Yeah. Okay, we're ready.
Yeah.
So when, go call them on the offer you just signed off on, say, okay, we're ready for closing tomorrow.
Let's cash deal, so maybe we get it.
Oh, hey. So how you can convey this is probably in your cover offer letter or just the plain old fashioned communication voice to voice. Hey, after taking Annie Fitzsimmons classes over the years, she yelled at me enough to like say, don't write or sooner on the front of the closing. But in the event, we could close sooner. I've talked to the lender and it may be possible, depending on your seller and stuff like that. So I'm communicating to you that there's a great possibility that we can close sooner than this date. But this is the safest date that the lender felt was appropriate for the offer. So if you communicate it well, the listing broker should, okay, well, that's good to know. There's a lot of things that kind of go behind that. That seller's still living in the property. Sometimes that just never works. It's really hard. Other. If you mark other at all, you will need a 65B or A, depending on the circumstance. 65B if your seller is going to occupy after closing. We've talked about the dangers in this, but if you are not closing, if you're not giving possession on closing, you have to execute a 65B for the seller, if the seller's maintaining possession. Now, what are you writing in the agreement for terms? Obviously, you're trying to win in multiple offers. If you know the seller needs a few days after closing, you're going to get that during your communication, right, with that listing broker to find out what are those needs. A lot of times listing brokers are putting in the agent-only remarks that seller needs rent back, right? Communicate that. How long is the rent back? Do they need, do they want to see a fee? Sometimes, for insurance purposes, they want to see at least, $150 or something, nominal. You just communicate. All right, time out. We've talked a lot about all these dangerous things and things you can do, but before you do that, we need to talk about some important clauses in our contracts, and that would be the Jerry Maguire clause. You guys hear me talk about this all the time in forms, but this is the boilerplate language of our Form 21, and it is purchase price. Buyer shall pay to seller the purchase price, including the earnest money, in cash at closing, unless otherwise specified in this agreement. Buyer represents that buyer has sufficient funds to close this sale in accordance with this agreement and is not relying on any contingent source of funds, including funds from loans, the sale of other property, gifts, retirement, or future earnings, except to the extent otherwise specified in this agreement. The parties shall use caution when wiring funds to avoid potential wire fraud. Before wiring funds, the party wiring funds shall take steps to confirm any wire instructions via an independently verified phone number and other appropriate measures. What does this mean? In simple terms, what does this mean? Every deal is cash. That's right, Jason. Every single deal you write is all cash. Suitcases full of money. It's immediately withdrawable. It's in checkings or savings. It's not any type of contingent source of funds. So the very first item in the full agreement that the buyer's agreeing to, that they have that money. You can't use proceeds from a sale. So when you're doing your consultations with the buyers, this is the timing, and right in your presentations, talking about, so show me the money. I mean, you kind of have to have that in the back of your mind, like, okay, so where are your funds? Your earnest money, your down payment. Oh, you're all cash? Okay, is it in checkings or savings? You have to follow up with questions. Future earnings, stock, gift money, 401k, retirement funds, all of those are contingent source of funds. So if you don't disclose those, and if they need those funds from a contingent source, you don't disclose it, what does that mean in the agreement? It just means the buyer's in breach right from the very beginning. What's the most common addendum that is used to show the buyer is relying on a contingent source of funds? What's the most common? Yes, 22A, financing contingency. That is the one you will most commonly see. Because if you use that addendum, you are following along exactly what the contract says to do. Right? You are showing that, where is it? It's fine. Right here. Otherwise specified in this agreement. You are specifying in the agreement that buyer intends to get a loan. You've got to ask, where are the funds? Every deal. Hey, I'm FHA. Hey, I'm FHA. Okay, so they're 3.5% down. Okay, great. How many times do you hear that, like, oh, well, actually it's 3.5% down, but I'm doing a down payment assistance, so it's actually no money out of my pocket. And I'm getting the earnest money from my grandma and grandpa. On a promissory note. At South Hill, I was managing. I had one of my newer brokers. I think it was her very first deal, and she's like, "I got a buyer. We're writing it up. We reviewed the offer." It's like, okay, great. And buyer's down payment was 20%, 20 or 25%, 25% down, something like it was a higher amount. Younger guy, and getting down to the week of closing, and the lender calls and says, "Hey, this deal's it's gonna go south. I'm sorry, we're not gonna be able to, do the loan, obviously, if the buyer doesn't have the down payment." The broker's like, "Well, what do you mean that he doesn't have the down payment?" He said, "Well, his money that's coming from his grandma, she's not going to give it to him anymore." The broker's like, "What?" So called up the buyer and said, "Hey, what's going on? The lender just called me and said we can't close." Come to find out, the buyer's down payment money was coming from grandma, and as soon as she found out that his new girlfriend was going to move in with them, she's like, "No way, I'm not giving you money. Forget it." So that deal, couldn't close. And she's like, "You didn't tell me you were getting gift funds." that really wasn't his fault. That's her fault. You have to be the one to ask, where's the money? Show me the money. Yeah, that's earnest money, that's down payment. Like, okay, so you have earnest money, it's in checking or savings. How do you plan to do it? Oh, well, actually, my grandma's gonna give me the down payment. You have to like dig deeper. If it's all cash, right? How do you know? I gave you the first one. Evidence of funds. No 22A. What if it says the words on the front page? Purchase price, all cash. Bam, yes. Buyers, all cash. Do they even have to write that? What's the deal? What's the Jerry Maguire clause? It's all cash anyway. They don't have to write that. It's all cash unless otherwise specified. So why are they writing that on the front page? It's the feel good. So no 22A financing addendum, right? Evidence of funds is absolutely something even Annie Fitzsimmons says should be countered on every deal. I see a lot of listing brokers writing in the agent-only remarks that please use a 22EF with all offers written. Bank statements, these are great to get copies of. Make certain that if you're supplying these, again, that the account numbers do not show. Their fidelity accounts. Now, is that a contingent source of funds? Can be. I mean, it depends on what these things, the items are, but what are you looking for when the evidence is given to you? Huh? It's current? Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. What if it's from like 10 years ago? How about matching the names? Yeah,
Laughing back there.
they've got.
And the parents aren't part of the.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens. We see this all the time. It just, I mean, you cannot just take the, the wording all cash or none of the proper addendums in the deal as it being just cash. Just this summer we had a deal where it was all cash and they didn't have a 22EF, and then all of a sudden, the broker's like, hey, there's someone trying to access a lockbox, and he calls like, what are you doing in my listing? Oh, I'm the appraiser. Appraiser, what are you doing in the house? Like, this is an all cash deal. Like, no, the lender is XYZ, a hard money loan place. No. It's gonna, it will bite you. Like, it's gonna make you look bad to your seller if you don't vet these offers that are coming over that are saying they're all cash or whatever,
The name that's on the contract needs to match the name on the statement. No parents, no other people, cousin, aunts.
Oh, yeah.
They're not part of the contract. LLCs.
Yeah. If it's an LLC, what do you do? It just says, oh, here's LLC something.
What do you do?
Look at the articles of incorporation, see if the owner is part of that.
Yeah, see who's part of that LLC. If the buyer's name is even a part of the LLC. Yeah, you gotta kind of take the steps and like vet these things to make sure that you're not getting something accepted that you're gonna lock your. See, the problem when there's no 22A, there's no 22F, there's none of these other things. How can your seller get out if they're not performing?
They can't.
There is no out. There's no other teeth in the contract for our sellers to get out if there's not the other addendums and if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. In 22A, if they're not performing, seller can end up terminating. There's no 22A, there's no, you're locked in the deal. So just be careful when you see the words, all cash. If you're giving the evidence, right? So Number 2, evidence of non-contingent funds. So if it is all cash, right? You're trying to get a deal accepted in a multiple offer situations. Why don't you get that evidence right up front? Get it provided, buyer brokers. Get a copy, make sure the names match, no account number showing, and provide that, and then just put 0 days in line 15. It's already given. Now, if you are going to get a loan, there's different ways to not use a 22A, waiving financing contingency. And we're gonna talk about that. So if you're going to do this way, right, you can actually mark disclosure of contingent funds, and there are these options, right? Buyer is relying on contingent funds. First is a loan. In the box, you've got to write what is the loan, what type of a loan. Okay? Sale of the following owned by a buyer. Okay? That is a property. That means that's where the funds are coming from. Now, does this mean it's contingent? No, there's no contingencies in that. It's just saying that's where the funds are coming from because of the Jerry Maguire clause. It's because of item A. If you're right, you've got to disclose where the funds are. If it's a contingent source of funds, this is where it's otherwise specified in the agreement. So you can use this. David's got a question. If you have an all-cash offer, seller's actually paying cash, make sure they order homeowner's insurance right away. Had a foreign buyer who didn't understand and had no insurance for 5 days. Ooh, yeah, that's dangerous. Binders are still important. You still got to do all those other proper procedures that you normally would. And I've heard of that happening before, David, actually. Good point. Okay, if you're going to do gift funds, you got to put in the dollar amount and where's it coming from? Okay, if the funds are, if you're representing a buyer, they're getting gift funds, what I would do is show some sort of documentation or explain it on the cover letter that gift funds are already deposited and a gift letter has already been written and received by the lender and approved. Like, do stuff like that to further explain it. Because if you just say the words, yep, gift funds, ooh, do they even have it? I mean, I see those words even to this day, and I think back to my broker who had the grandma who like took the money back or didn't even give the money. They said, I'm not going to give the money. So just do what you can to shore that up. And then funds not readily convertible to liquid United States funds, describe. If you have money coming from outside the country, describe there, or there's a straight up other. Now, if you're marking a loan, what are you going to write into this buyer shall provide evidence to seller 10 days if not filled in prior to closing that the funds relied upon in section 3 have been received or are immediately available to buyer? What are you going to write in that? You're going to keep it at default 10 days before closing? No? How many days are you going to write?
Whenever you're closing,
Whenever closing is?
either 20 days, 30 days.
30 days? Before?
The 21 days that's on 22D.
Nope. I'll read it one more time. Buyer shall provide evidence to seller 10 days, if not filled in, prior to closing that the funds relied upon in section 3 have been received. Where are they going to be received?
At closing.
At closing. What is closing? Where's closing?
Whatever the lender decides.
Escrow?
Yep.
That's escrow. When typically are funds sent from a lender to escrow?
Day of closing.
Day of
Day
closing.
of closing. If you have it 10 days in here, they're not getting these funds 10 days before closing. And that's at default. So you need to make certain if you're using 22EF and they are getting a loan, but they don't want to make it contingent upon financing, you can use this marking loan, the type of loan, but you better follow it up to have 0 days. Because if buyer does not do this, right, seller may terminate.
I have a question. What if they need an appraisal?
What if they need an appraisal?
I'm just.
Yeah, they do need an appraisal.
Right, so what form would you add in addition to the 22EF if you're gonna have a loan as contingent source of funds? What are you gonna do to be able to get your buyer and the lender's appraisal access to the property?
Isn't it 22AA?
Yep, 22AA is the other form you would have to use with the 22EF if you're getting a loan. Because it has language built into the form that states that the seller will allow appraisal or inspection from lender. And also it has an appraisal contingency up. We'll get in that one in a moment. All right, making the deal stronger in Form 21. Information verification period. Buyer shall have 10 days after mutual acceptance to verify all information provided from the seller or listing firm related to the property. This contingency shall be deemed satisfied unless buyer gives notice identifying the materially inaccurate information within 10 days of mutual acceptance. If buyer gives timely notice under this section, then this agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. So, we are seeing a lot of agents cross out Section W in their offers. This takes away the verification period for the buyer. That's verifying anything. We have gotten buyers out of deals because this clause is still intact, and that's with waiving inspection, waiving Form 17, waiving financing, waiving everything else. HOA review, everything, all of their contingency was waived, except for this one was still there. And we found inaccuracies. The one I did last was the property flyer had AC. It said home has AC. Guess what? The home didn't have AC. Is that an inaccurate information provided by seller or listing firm who makes the flyers? Oh, that listing broker was so mad when we sent the termination. We sent the form 50, or excuse me, yeah, 50 and a blank notice 90, just that stated that buyer elects to terminate the agreement due to inaccurate listing information. And the listing broker called right, like it's sent, and it was like immediately call later. What are you guys walking? You got cold feet? And they're like, no. You said the home has AC and it doesn't. We never said this home has AC. It's not in the listing. We're not giving earnest money back. I go, no, it's on the flyer. The client still had the flyer and they were mad. They're like, this house doesn't have AC. And we're like, I don't see it says it has AC. Where do you see that? Oh, it's on the flyer I have. You have that flyer? That's an out. It's inaccurate. Oh man, she was pissed. She was so mad. I am calling the MLS, I'm complaining, and man, she was going off. And it's like, we're scanning over the flyer from your flyer. Here you go with it circled on there. Called back. I received the flyer. My marketing person copied from the last listing and left it in there. We're signing off on the 50. Got them out. Got the money back. So that was a lesson learned. So that is a way out. And it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. What was the last one you had?
Everything was waived. The client actually had cold feet. Actually was negotiating over carpet. Earnest money was deposited. They told the listing agent, we went out because we don't like the condition of the house. There were no contingencies whatsoever. And we got them out because the area was incorrect and the community was incorrect. And I think it was a newer agent who had just copied it from the previous listing. We sent over the documentation along with blank notice form 50. They signed it within a half hour and she was pissed.
Oh yeah. Because see, those types of mistakes reflect on the brokers themselves. And they'll have to go to their seller and like they're walking. Now we don't know what the true, story that they're telling their sellers, like they got cold feet and they walked. Okay, let's get another buyer, whatever. But those mistakes is what caused the verification period clause for them to utilize this to get out of the deal. But these are getting changed to maybe 1 day. It's dangerous to use, but it is happening. You got to caution your buyers when they're using this in offers. How many people are doing that right now in your offers for your buyers? Are you doing that? Are you
taking it
doing
out?
this? You're not.
It protects the
It's
buyer,
pretty.
the
It's.
seller, everybody.
I mean, it does. BK.
What if, I had a house on Lake Sammamish and the seller told me he had a boat launch and it's gonna go with the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, no, I've changed, and it was, I put it on the flyer, and then he says, no, I'm not gonna, I never said.
Was it in the deal? Written in the deal by the buyer?
The buyer wanted it.
But it was
Put
written
it in the
in
deal.
included
In
items.
the purchase and sale agreement. Did the buyer put it in the purchase and sale?
Can't hear Simona.
I just asked if the buyer had written it into the purchase and sale agreement. Because
Because it was on the flyer.
okay.
It
so-
doesn't matter. Yeah. It's if the flyer said all, washer and dryer, all appliances included on the flyer, then your contract only has the fridge marked and the stove. Does the seller have to leave those other items? No, they don't. But that's,
The buyer could walk
well,
if they want out of it.
yeah, that one would not.
They can walk.
I don't know. That one would be really tough because it's in the instructions in the actual boilerplate language. It says you will mark the included items regardless of what listing or anything else says. Because even if you had in the agent remarks that seller intends to take the washer and dryer, they will not convey with the property. They're not included, and they put it in big bold letters. And then you write it up and you mark them to be included on the deal. If the seller signed off on that, they have to include them. So it kind of goes both ways. You just got to be careful when dealing with that. All right, making the deal stronger continued. Loan type is very important. This is another bullet point item you're going to compare other offers to as listing brokers. The amount down is very important. Is the buyer fully underwritten? This is a critical thing now in our deals, in our transactions. That's something you should be talking with your buyer and their lender. Say, is the buyer fully underwritten approved? If that happens, typically they can close in about 14 days. And a lot of times you can, waive a financing contingency. So it can make you stronger. I would much rather take a 5% down conventional loan, fully underwritten, done and approved, closing earlier, than someone who's even 20% down and they have not gone through the fully underwritten approved process. It's just they're farther down the line of being done. They just need a clean title report and they need the appraisal. That's all they need to do. All right, financing contingency, A or B, you can mark the, there we go. You can mark B if they want to have a waiver, right? For automatic waiver. If you're going to do an automatic waiver and marking B, you talk to the client. If they're fully underwritten, maybe the strategy with the lender is like, hey, we're fully underwritten. We can close in probably 14 days, business days. Then you might want to make the automatic contingency be at a term, maybe 18 days or something like that. And then it's automatically done and over. And then it's waived. Or if you want to waive it right up front, you still use your 22A, mark B, and put 0 days on line 38. But you've got to figure out what you're going to do for appraisal less than sales price. If you're going to do buyer's waiver of the financing contingency under this paragraph 2B, is it will, and it's will not if not filled in, constitute waiver of paragraph 5, appraisal less than sales price. If you are putting B 0 days on line 38, and also marking will, that means the buyer is buying the house at whatever appraised value it is. Listed at 700,000, and you escalate to 800, and the appraisal comes in at 500, your buyer's got to come up with another $300,000 down payment of additional money to cover that gap. So be really careful using this. You probably should be doing a CMA for your buyers to see what list price, if where they're at, if they're listing at market price, are they listing elevated already? You're going to have to do your homework and do your due diligence and figure that out maybe before you write that offer.
So that means if you use on the top 0 and then the bottom is will not, or which one? Or
Most of the time you want it to be will not, because will not means you still have the low appraisal contingency in the deal. That's right here, number 5.
right.
This is the
That,
most common thing.
if you mark will, if you mark the will box, that means 5 is gone. None of that information is on the deal. But that only happens when financing contingency is waived. So if you're marking A, I know it is confusing, and see, this is part of the problem about even listing brokers not understanding our forms. You making the offers and like, yep, we're waiving our financing contingency from the beginning. We're using option B, we're marking 0, and we're even saying we'll pay whatever the appraisal comes in at. Listing brokers don't even understand it. They're like, oh, you have a financing contingency? You're going to have to communicate to them and let them know that, hey, we're waiving financing via the new option B. We're putting 0 days. You make sure they understand it too. You're going to have to communicate. If they kind of come back and go, what? Why are you having even a, why are you doing that then? You might have to explain it. Appraisal less than sales price, seller's response. Obviously, there's none of that in there at all. Or, I call this the Russian roulette. No 22A. And what we see is some brokers do no financing contingency 22A at all, and they're getting a loan. Right? Purchase loan, and they write this language maybe on a Form 34, they put it in 22D, page 2, other. Purchase loan, seller agrees to permit the buyer's lender and or appraisers to access the property in the event the buyer elects to obtain purchase loan. This agreement is not conditioned on buyer obtaining a purchase loan. However, buyer's source of funds is a mortgage on said property in addition to down payment. So it goes totally against, what the Jerry Maguire clause says. I mean, but you're stating they are getting a loan. It's not the best option, and we're still seeing this a ton. A ton. Huh?
Sometimes it's so vague.
Oh, sometimes it's extremely vague. You just have to ask more questions. In the 22AA appraisal addendum to purchase sale agreement, you can use this with no 22A and still a 22EF. Okay, so if you want no financing contingency, the other option, if you don't want to do the option of option B in 22A, putting 0 days, you can have no 22A. That means there's no financing contingency whatsoever. There's no low appraisal contingency whatsoever. But you're using 22EF. You're writing in, the third option boxes down on the bottom, section, and stating buyer, is obtaining a loan, right? This is where you can also add in a low appraisal contingency, and it has the verbiage in here, inspection. If buyer disclosed the buyer is obtaining the loan, seller shall permit inspectors required by lender, including but not limited to structural, pest, heating, plumbing, roof, etc., right? And it says also in here that waiver, this appraisal contingency shall be deemed waived unless buyer gives notice of low appraisal. So it actually has a low appraisal contingency protection. It's just like the section 5 and 22A. It follows those same guidelines, But you can also layer on top of that a 22D AD additional down payment option. This is where we see most of our competitive offers come in with a 22 AD. So if you've been losing out and you're writing lots of deals and there's been, I mean, this is what we hear, like, hey, I will pay over the asking, but if there's no 22 AD to the listing brokers, they're like, well, they may not have that other funds above asking. So this is how you guarantee it and shore it up. In the 22 AD, you can write in how much funds the buyer's willing to bring in to additional down payment. Most listing brokers want to see the same dollar amount in this line as the amount over what they're paying. So if you're doing a $750,000 purchase, it was listed at 700, you're doing a 22 AD of 50,000 in here, that's kind of what they're looking for. That's the guarantee that the buyer's got those additional funds. Now, you've got to explain to the buyer, this is not, you know, this is not part of your down payment. This is more money on top of that. Who else do you need to involve if you're going to use this? Who? Lender. Yes, talk to the lender. Can they do this? Talking to someone a couple days ago, and they're like, oh, I talked to the lender. They said no 22 ADs. You already, like, you're not paying much over then. They can't do much. Yeah, it's almost time. This also in 22 AD, if you have no 22A, you can use a 22EF and also a 22AA, and you can mark the option 2. And that's increased down payment, right? With evidence of funds, not a 22A financing contingency. If you're using 22AD at all, you cannot use a 22AN, notice of low appraisal. You can't send that at all, because 22AD replaces low appraisal notice. You have to use a 22ADN. That's a notice of low appraisal. Now, if you do that, there are dangers, because it says right in there, if you send it, seller may terminate the agreement. So the seller can actually back out if you're giving that notice. So you got to be really careful and be strategic. Try to negotiate giving copy of that appraisal, get it all done on a Form 34, you know, for clarification purposes. The purchase price shall be this new amount, get full of signatures. Now you're good. You just cannot send that, but communicate and understand how that form works, because it can actually cause the seller to terminate. The worst one I've heard of is that the broker had a 22 AD, and it was for 50,000. The deal came in 55,000 low, so it was just $5,000 more. They sent the 22 ADN, and then the seller's like, we got a backup offer for even more money. Thank you. Bye. And they're like, no, we're gonna pay the 5,000. Nope, sorry. Too bad. You sent it. It's terminated. No, but we already deposited. It doesn't matter. You gave a right to a seller to terminate if you use it. So there's some dangers in those forms. You gotta understand it. Okay. Escalations. We know these are being used a lot. Sorry, we're running a little over, guys. We're almost done though. So increased amount to a cap. Don't forget, if you're using these and all the other offers have escalations, every price gets escalated to the top amount, and then it's calculated backwards. So just know that if you're doing it, it is a safer way, I guess, if you know you're willing to beat other offers by a certain amount. I think the craziest one I've ever seen in my life was in South Lake Union. No shock. My listed broker said, Eric, what does this mean? And it said $1 on line 12, that they would increase to $1 And then in line 13, they did the infinity symbol. They'd pay any amount over, it'd be $1 higher than anyone no matter what. That, you can't do that. That, and who wants to deal with someone who's like, I'm gonna pay you $1 more? No. Yeah, get out of here. That was the craziest one I've ever seen. Okay. Calculations are very important. If it's wrong now, buyer can end up terminating or even getting the back to list price if you don't supply the full, complete competing offer. So there's some dangers in that. All right, quiz time. No inspection equals no 35R or 35W inspection addendum. Is that correct? Oh, we're not doing inspection. So you don't put in the form at all? 35W. You have to include a 35W. No, don't. We saw one that had no nothing. Oh yeah, we're not having it inspected. Then please have a 35W sign now. That's what that form was created for separately.
Or if you include it, if you cross out and have your buyer initial, does that work?
Do what? Have it initialed? No. You know, if they're waiving it, you have to use this one now. If they use a pre-inspection, use the 35W and mark that pre-inspection was conducted. Don't just put waived. I've seen that mistake a lot. I mean, it's the same thing, but it shows that in the agreement they actually had a pre-inspection performed. So please make sure you mark that. And you have to have a pre-inspection agreement signed by the seller and the buyer, and then the selling broker's information on the addendum as well. Inspection addendum, May, 10 days, 5 is probably best. Communicate that. We're still seeing inspections happening, but they're just not happening as often. Other MLS form for disclosure, 22Js, waived, all right? You're probably gonna waive. I think if the home's built prior to 1978, there's lead-based paint in there somewhere. We just don't know how many layers it is all the way to that. Form 17, you have to sign the top line if you are receiving a form filled out. You can also sign number 2 as well. That's waiving the right to revoke their offer based on the Form 17. We are seeing this in multiple offer situations, but if you do that, you can't get out based on the disclosures because that's 3 days from receipt. So you get that from the supplements or documents from the MLS, you give it to your client even before mutual, that clock starts ticking. That's receipt. They received it. So just be really careful in that scenario. But this is what we're seeing in multiple offer situations. If you have not been having buyers sign off on that on the line 1 and 2, it might be the reason why you have not won. All right, okay, buyer. Now that you've given up your firstborn, given waiver money, waived everything, waived item W, verification period. Please, 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 everyone, you've got to have the buyer's advisory and the seller's market. Have your buyers sign these off, even in the consultations. It's 2 pages. It goes over all the risks of items if they waived or if they don't do any of these contingencies. It's more protection for you and the firm to stay out of lawsuits and out of trouble because they are giving up a lot right now. So have these every single time. All right, other ways to improve your odds of winning in multiple offer situations. Submit a personalized handwritten cover letter or video from the buyer. In addition, include your resume, your team's resume, and your lender's resume. Just other information. I love the video idea. Love letters, we're still seeing them. Oregon has banned them. I don't know if that's coming to Washington yet. It may. I think the Realtors Association is looking at that. But I have seen a $50,000 love letter. We had a seller take a $50,000 lower offer because they loved the buyer. They connected well with the buyer. Don't allow the other broker or a fax machine or an email to your buyer to be your buyer's sole voice. You cannot do that anymore. You cannot do that. Quiz time. Can you write the letter for your buyer, the love letter?
No.
Oh, but you're such a good writer, Just.
I don't speak English that well.
Yeah,
You do this
that's the
all the
excuse.
time.
Yeah, I hear the excuse from buyers. What, we don't speak English very well. Will you please write our letter? You can't do that. If you violate fair housing laws in that, you could be held to a lawsuit. No way, ever, never ever. Listing brokers, how do you handle multiple offers? How about selling your home guide? Going over how that's part of your strategy. Jesse was just talking about every listing appointment he goes over to show his value proposition. He shows them, the seller, his Excel spreadsheet of all the multiple offers, the last ones he reviewed with his seller. Well, which offer would you take, seller? And they kind of, where do they go? Where do their eyes go? Bottom line, highest price. He goes, yep, you would think that was the offer we would take, but nope, we took this one. Because look, we got guaranteed earnest money. We had a closing earlier. I spoke to the lender. I know the agent's a professional. Good, clear communication. This agent was terrible. Explaining these things makes a big difference, and the sellers can appreciate that. So just like this, we have this Excel file. I can send that out to you. It is basically, you can fill it in and it shows the calculations at the bottom. It only has like 5 offers in it. If you're dealing with 20 something offers, you might want to like kind of create your own or add on to
We
this.
have another one that we can send them.
Okay.
The Excel one.
Okay. And then your final quiz, this is it. Last one, you guys. How do you win guaranteed 100% of all multiple offers? This is a true strategy. Be the listing broker. That's how you win 100% of the time in multiple offer situations. But that is another class. All right. Thank you guys so much for making it.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep. All the people who came in today, you are also a little bonus to trying to get more people coming into the office. You're going to get the 32 strategies to win more often in multiple offers.
And we'll
So,
send you the 2 Excel spreadsheets.
and the spreadsheets we will send out. But thank you guys for making it. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Great class.
Thank you. Thanks, Justin.